So but I can tell you...
What do you think then of his chances at Treasury? Will he solve the problems that
no, he cannot.
You have?
He cannot. He cannot. They are too deep. In fact, I'm watching him. Next week, he's supposed to sign his first actual statements of revenue and expenditure. Gazette notice by the 16th. If he signs that notice, that Gazette notice, and he accepts something called odious debt, he has fallen into the trap. If I were him, I would be very careful what the Treasury officials ask him to sign. Very careful. If they even tell him this is normal, they are lying to him. It's a criminal enterprise, that Treasury. It is fraught with unconstitutionality and criminality, so entrenched and so deep and so far-reaching. I can tell you, Yvonne, if there was anyone to fear, forget William Ruto. The fear is, what are those forces that have taken trillions from us and still are? Who are those forces? Those are the ones you should be saying I should be fearing, because it's a criminal mafia beyond your imagination that has made sure we are an enslaved nation and will be for many years to come unless we solve this problem now.
And what is this problem now?
I'll tell you. It is fraught in unconstitutionality. I was talking earlier about the Court of Appeal, who said categorically there is something that has been omitted in the current budget, or rather the previous one, called the revenue estimates in the appropriation bill. Appropriation bill is the bill, is the budget. So revenue is where the government believes it's going to get revenue from. And then you have expenditure, how it's going to spend it. That is long before the finance bill. And this is the Constitution of Kenya. They omit putting the revenue into the appropriations bill because they want to steal. If they make this law, then they are bound by it. And the biggest problem is they've not been doing it. So there's been a massive fraud that has committed on Kenyans. Unfortunately, the Court of Appeal has stopped it. So they stopped the finance bill, which some of us have helped challenge, the Okiya Mtata bill. We were instrumental in that bill, the challenge of that bill. And they have stopped the finance bill of 2023. Gen Z stopped the finance bill of 2024. William Ruto has to go to the revenue-raising measures of 2022 of Uhuru.
The additional raising measures.
Additional raising measures.
Yes, the taxes.
Of 2022. All right? Which means we need, for example, VAT at 8% or 16%. Now, the biggest problem William Ruto is facing is debt payments. They are today 70% of his tax revenue. If you go back to the revenue-raising measures and what they collected in 2022, I can assure you, you're going to be over 80, probably towards 90%. And he's in big, big trouble.
And you've been talking about odious debt.
Absolutely. Now, I want you to understand debt in relation to the law. All our debt must be anchored on the law. And any debt that is not in this book called the Constitution is a fraud on the Kenyan people because it didn't come to us. So when you do not raise revenue estimates, you have not anchored debt. So any appropriation that does not have revenue estimates means any debt taken was not constitutional. That's where we even start. The current budget, the current appropriations, it did not have a revenue estimate. It's actually an illegal law right now. And we're going to challenge it. And soon you'll be hearing there's no budget, there's no appropriation, because it did not have the revenue estimates. Okay? So he's spending, or rather collecting and spending money that is unconstitutional. They have refused to follow the law. And the only reason they are doing that is because there must be some benefit by avoiding it. Now, that has caused us odious debt, and I'll simplify this odious debt. Simplify it. There's something called primary balance, right? You look at the accounts of the nation, its expenses and its income. So, we did the sums, just simple math, from 2013 all the way to to 2023 June, right? What are the expenses of a nation? Removing only one item, debt payments. So that total was 14.6 trillion. Then we said, what did Kenya Revenue collect? Kenya Revenue collected in the same period 13.3 trillion, right? Now 13.3 trillion means that in 10 years, the difference from 14.6 to 13.3 was 1.3 trillion. So if we needed to borrow, we only needed to borrow 1.3 trillion. It's important to understand that this sum of our expenses is the entire development budget, which was 6 trillion. It's entire counties' budgets. It's entire salaries. It is entire pensions. It is entire operations of the government. Difference, 1.3. So he said, what did the government borrow? They borrowed 7.7 trillion. 6.4 trillion that was not needed.
Where did it go?
Now, the government